Hello everyone and welcome to TCMU webinar on HVAC energy efficiency. Heating, ventilation and air conditioning systems consumes almost 50% of the total energy, which makes it a very vital aspect. Currently, the space cooling demand and the requirement in India is predominantly made by the fans and RAC for residential buildings and RAC chillers and VRF systems in commercial and public spaces. Being a cost conscious country like India, we insist on affordable cooling solutions. So, meeting the demand for an affordable energy efficient systems happens to be a paramount factor. Another factor is limited access to affordable, efficient solutions, unavailability of affordable, efficient solutions leads to adoption of higher GWP variants, and low efficient HVAC systems, which further leads to increased carbon footprints also. India's cooling action plan has set up targets across various sectors to ensure affordability and sustainable cooling, including for the service sector. However, initiatives like BEE's flagship products, schemes of standards and labeling, energy conservation building code, and performance achieved trade emphasizes on improving energy efficiency in appliances, buildings, and industries. Availability of skilled laborers is also one of the major concern in HVAC industry. The number of HVAC technicians in India today are around 2 lakhs. And I guess it will take at least another 2 decades for us to double the number of skills technicians because the technicians today requires a lot of technical training to maintain sustainable cooling technologies across various industries. So today on this note, we are going to witness an engaging interactive session on HVAC energy efficiency. Today's panelists of leading experts will talk about the energy conserving techniques and other technologies being practiced for efficiency in HVAC. We are sure it's going to be a very enlightening and constructive session for all our attendees. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me and a privilege to introduce you to our today's distinguished panelists. I welcome Mr. Balasubramaniam, MB, Counselor, CII Sorabji, Godrej Green Business Center, Mr. Hiten Patel, IGBC accredited professional. He is also an HVAC professional in thermal acoustic and insulation expert. Mr. Anish Kadian, he is the Executive Director, Property Management, CBRE South Asia Private Limited, and Mr. VD Zala, the Managing Director of AS Group of Companies. So, delegates, get ready to witness an engaging session and an interactive session on HVAC energy efficiency. Let us start with our today's first topic, which is conservation techniques to maintain efficiency in cooling, which will be presented by Mr. Balasubramaniam, MB, who is associated with CII Godrej Green Business Center. To take this session forward, I would like to invite Mr. Balasubramaniam, MB, and start his views on his particular presentation. Mr. Balasubramaniam is associated with CII Godrej as a counselor for Green Business Center. He has an experience of more than 12 years in the field of energy efficiency and in climate change, particularly in industrial and business building sectors. Coming from engineering background, he pursued his BE degree in electrical engineering and ME degree in energy engineering. He is also a BEE accredited energy auditor and an ISO 5001 lead auditor. In today's session, he will be discussing about various conservation techniques which are being used to maintain efficiency in a cooling in HVAC industry. So let's welcome Mr. MB Balasubramaniam to start up with this session, and please take over this speech. Thank you so much.
If you see what we are looking at is this is particular building. Many of you might be knowing that it is CII Sorabji Godrej Green Business Center from Hyderabad. So this is the first platinum rated green building in India, And if you see, we have been associated with this for a long time. And even before this, we were working on energy efficiency and climate change activities. So if you see, this particular building has become a net zero energy building now. And if we look at the systems within the building, from the design stage till the end, several factors have been considered. Considering the thermal comfort, earlier we had a rooftop garden. Now we have completely converted it into a net zero energy building. This net zero energy building we have been able to achieve with a particular type of a panel called the bifacial solar panels. On the roofs, you can see the bifacial solar panels. The idea of these panels is it is solar on both the sides. That is, it will generate from both the sides. Means there is a point of keeping the panel even vertical at places. That is because even during the morning and in the evening hours, you get some additional power generation from these to maintain a good set of system. So overall, if you see this particular building that we have earlier was a platinum rated building, and recently we have converted to a net zero energy building. The energy conservation that we are looking at this is 50% lesser than a conventional building at that time. And the systems that we have installed, like rooftop garden, the wind tower systems, and many other systems are also there. We have also installed alternate to STP system, which is a phytoremediation. That is, the plants and the gravels, they purify the water and give it to the next stage. Okay, I had specifically, if you see CIS energy services, we have close to 36 energy professionals, and I'll not go into very deep of each slide, sir, because I have a lot of slides. So I'll go to the basics of the slide and then quickly continue to the next. So kindly excuse me if I'm a little fast at places. So we have been doing mandatory energy, detailed and mandatory energy audits. Mandatory energy audits have also become need for the buildings nowadays. And we have an experience of 28 years. And over the globe, we have done several audits. We have been awarded the National Best Energy Auditor by PCRA and Certificate of Merit by Bureau of Energy Efficiency earlier. So quickly coming into the topic of the presentation, what we are looking at from the building point of view, or from the, any company point of view, that we are looking at the chiller system, the chilled water pumping system, domestic water pumping system, specifically for buildings, STPs, lighting system, boilers, steam systems, and compressors. These may be the focus area that we are looking at. And let's say that specific energy consumption that you have is at a much higher level. So it's at a much higher level. So slowly you can reach to the bottom, lowest SEC, that one of the best buildings in the world. But usually the approach mostly is in this way. It is usually a mix of ideas that you can get, but mostly it is like low-hanging fruits are something which you quickly take. Then fine-tuning with the marginal investment is something which you can look at. High energy saving projects, your replacement of the chiller with efficient chillers and others you can think of. And innovative opportunities for energy savings is something you have to think of beyond this particular point, like radiant cooling system or any other geothermal systems. So those kind of ideas and all can be brought up into this particular activity. So this is just a gist of the number that I am giving here over what could be the kilowatt per TR of the chiller system in various different this. That is a chiller compressor. Let's say one of the best numbers is 0.53 kilowatt per TR. Recently, it has gone a little bit down, but usually it is close to this particular number. Let's put it that way. So chilled water pumps consume somewhere around 0.03. Cooling water pumping system is 0.03. The cooling water pump, I'm sorry, I've put cooling water pumps against the cooling fans. That consume somewhere around 0.028 kilowatt per TR. So overall, we can expect somewhere around 0.62 kilowatt per TR in this particular system. So if you see the latest technologies, there are centrifugal two-stage chilling, high efficiency with VFD mounted pumps. That is, we have replaced our existing chiller system with the new chiller system. And we have gone for a VFD mounted pumps because of the smaller range that we are looking at. So this has also been installed in our office. These are some of the points we can probably, some of the features of the high efficiency buildings. So I'll just go into the case study part to be very straightforward. 50% of the heat is something which is getting wasted in the chiller in the form of the condensation system, condensing of the refrigerant. So this is something which you have a good potential to tap, and it is specifically very useful for industries where refrigeration is significantly used, and it is also very useful for buildings, specifically the hotel parts. And there are also some suppliers who are giving a heat pump system. That is, they say we can produce up till 90 degrees Celsius of hot water, and that hot water can be produced from the chilling system that we are looking at. There are also even suppliers who actually look much further as well. So there are very good possibilities at this particular point. So this is one such example. Let's say 60 degrees Celsius is the heat, which is specifically coming from your air-cooled condenser system. The air-cooled condenser system can actually be reduced to a lower number, let's say to 45 degrees Celsius or so. And this waste heat recovery can be used in your system. So considering this, this is a small example of a 100 TR system that I have put across, but it is very much scalable and very much possible to be implemented across the sectors as well. So that we are looking at. Next is on adiabatic cooling system. This is an air-cooled condenser where there is a mesh put around the condenser, and the fine spray of water is put on the mesh. So water is put on the mesh, not on the condenser side. So whatever air that comes in actually gets evaporated, and it cools the water. Cools the air. So this can even give a better performance than a water-cooled system at places where the ventilation is very good. I won't say it is always better, but the ventilation of the system I have seen being poorer as well in some cases. In some cases, when the air-cooled condensers are placed side by side, the heat of one is actually being sucked into the other condenser as well. So this is one such system. If you see it, this is completely enclosed system. This is one such system we would like to promote in a way. It is like these are the pads that we are looking at, and water is stripped from inside from the top, and the air that is going through is completely going through this particular system. As you can see, even there is closing on the sides as well. So the advantage of this system is it can give you a very good performance. The only disadvantage initially that you see would be the slight increase in power consumption of the fans, but the decrease in the chiller power consumption will be very significant in comparison to the power consumption of the fans, which will actually be much more beneficial. For example, let's say we are at a zone where the wet bulb temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. The water cool system, the cooling media can give you 32 degrees Celsius. Air cool system is always the ambient value that we are looking at. And let's say they can give you up till 35 degrees Celsius of air that is being input into the system. And in the air cool system with the water fogging that we were talking about can give you even up till 30 degrees Celsius. That is some couple of degrees Celsius lesser than the existing system. So one more, I would touch upon a couple more things as well. So this is one such. What happens is oil sticks to the refrigerant surface. So the idea of this particular Max R100 or the refrigerant agent that we are looking at is we can actually separate them out, and we can look at a system where the heat transfer is much better. So similarly, two-way or three-way walls is one question which comes up. I'll quickly go through it. A three-way wall has a disadvantage of water getting circulated, but the icing and chiller is avoided. So the advantage of a two-way wall, the idea is you will have to keep a bypass wall, and this bypass wall circulation will avoid the icing in the chiller, and the two-way wall will actually reduce the power consumption of the pumping system overall, and even the chiller evaporator temperature can be marginally improved. So I believe you are aware about the EC electronically commutated fans. So if you see, these are the electronically commutated drives that we have. This is one centrifugal system that we are looking at. It is much more efficient because of the direct disc driven system. It has a VFD inbuilt and other advantages that we are looking at. The latest development on the same system is going for an axial fan instead of a centrifugal fan as well. And this can also be brought up with the direct system. This is one such example where a very badly looking fan, or at the end of the lifetime fan, has been replaced with this axial fan that we are talking about. And this is a similar economics that we are looking at over here, but it is slightly costlier to go for the axial fans in comparison to this. But it's still at the design stage, we would still recommend you to go for the axial part. So this is an oil fouling. What happens is, due to the oil fouling, the efficiency of the chiller reduces. This is a circulation system. What happens is there are sponge balls which actually go into the tubes of the condenser and clean them. This has been implemented by Hyderabad International Airport as well, and they have also got a significant this. This is something from our. This is an idea they have got from our energy award, and they have replicated in their places. Sir. So again, lastly, probably I'll look at the geothermal system. In the geothermal system, if you are looking at what happens is if you go below the earth at a particular distance, the temperature remains constant throughout the year. So the advantage of this geothermal system is it going down the earth immediately the temperatures will not increase. Only after a particular time, till a particular time distance, the temperature actually reduces. So you can circulate the water through the geothermal system. This has been implemented by ISB Mohali in their campus. So that is an advantage. You can also see the NDTV program where they have openly told in the NDTV CII program. So if you see, this would be the wet bulb and this would be the conventional cooling system performance normally. But if you see, a constant geosync temperature can give you a constant performance throughout the year. The other advantage of this system is it can definitely be cascaded with the existing cooling tower. And the other advantage is you can have a very good performance throughout the year that you're looking at instead of looking at one-time performance or so. Okay. Lastly, I would like to say this, sir. We have a free CII energy efficiency help desk. So anybody who wants to ask any questions on energy efficiency, we would be very glad to help and support them.
Our next topic for today is energy efficient insulation for HVAC systems. I would like to invite Mr. Hiten Patel, Hiten Harish Patel. He's an HVAC professional and thermal and acoustic insulation expert at IGBC, accredited professional, and he is also associated with Sri Jashraj Enterprises. In this session, Mr. Hiten Patel will be talking about insulation techniques. A brief introduction which I would like to give about him is that Mr. Patel is a certified professional to apply in certification of green building projects as an IGBC accredited professional. He holds an experience of more than 16 years in this field. He is also associated with ISHRE Mumbai Chapter Committee as a co-chair program. Presently, he heads the business department of technical and sales at Sri Jashraj Enterprises in Mumbai, wherein they offer consultation and professional services and expert advisories in the field of thermal and acoustic insulation application solutions for the HVAC industry. So, delegates, let's welcome Mr. Hiten Patel.
We know that India is a it's a hot and a tropical country, and in tropical and hot countries you have lot many applications on the insulation part which we need to still explore. If I talk about the Western countries, it's more on the colder side. So see the image which shows if you see the area of heat losses in the homes. So this is something brief I would like to take then into the insulation so that you understand well. If any any residence, if we see there are losses of heat, through the roofs, through the ventilation, to the flues, to the walls. So whatever air conditioning we do inside the building, there are many factors where you have a heat gain in terms of India. If I talk about the hotter countries, so there's a lot of heat gain from the outside. It can be solar radiation, it can be some other sources too. What are the market and scope for thermal insulation in India is we have industries that includes process, pharma, food, dairy, automobile, and many more. We have residential spaces where we go for the comfort air conditioning. We have commercial offices where we have the IT offices, server rooms, those kind of applications where we require air conditioning. Hospitals and homes where we require a lot of hygiene, a lot of places where we need to control temperatures in terms of manufacturing of medicines. Then we have mall and exhibitions. Again, this is a comfort application. Then we have hotel and restaurant, which includes the hospitality. Now, I will just like to talk about what is insulation. We say we have seen this kind of insulation like ship pull insulation. Basically, if we touch about insulation is something which we have, which we go in day to day. Everybody will go like winters have been started and people are wearing sweaters or jackets. Now, what is that? That is nothing but insulation which covers our body, that our body temperature remains, comfortable. This is what insulation it works about. Now, how the thermal insulation works is in basically what it does. it slows down the rate of heat exchange. Like if I see on the image, this image is for the chilled water pipe, that is for the cold insulation. When you see the purple color, it's in the inside of the chilled water pipe, inside side, that is at 7 degrees, and the colored one are the layers of insulation. The black part, if we see about, is the ambient condition. So if I talk about in case of cold application, inside temperature is always less than the ambient. So this is how there is a heat gain inside. And in case of hot applications, the inside temperature is more than the ambient. So this is where there is a heat loss. Now, these are the points which I have gone through, that, which we know that heating and ventilation, air conditioning accounts to around 65 to 70% of, building energy use in the tropical climate as India. Like we might differ with some percentage, but this is how 65 to 70% what we see. So now my point of view, if I talk about, is new and existing HVAC technologies has come up, which can, reduce the operating cost. Like if I say energy efficient machines, which has a latest technology, which Mr. Balasubramanian had already discussed on the geothermal technology, or the inverter based VRV systems, magnetic bearing chillers, heat pumps, energy recovery wheel, and many more. So which are very much essential for the power saving which is required. But the point which I wanted to share is, the supporting systems which require to run that machine or capital equipments. One of some such system is the thermal insulation. Now, coming to the fourth point, the supporting systems such as thermal insulation can help in, additionally contributing into the incremental power or energy saving. So we need to also look at that aspect, which is not much seen in today's scenario, but yes, it also has an effect or an impact on the incremental power saving. The fifth point which I wanted to communicate is, people more focus, on the capex and opex, like, the savings what we do in the capex, what will be the opex. Now, my point of view is, in general, if I talk about, so saving of capex and opex should not be the only criteria for selection of any effective HVAC system, because the power misuse or depletion due to the heat loss or heat gain accounts to the depletion of or the wastage of the natural resources, thereby the natural treasure. So whatever natural resources like coal we have, these are on the limited stage which is available to us. So insulation should be more focused, so that, you do not compromise on the thickness selection, generic selection, or many factors, which incurs to the cost, like what we see. So it is more comes on the like first the capital equipments and all has been selected, and then it comes to insulation. So equal weightage, that is what my request is, equal weightage should be given to also these systems. This is my urge to the industry and also the industry stalwarts, that, mandatory norms, unless the mandatory norms comes through the Bureau of Indian Standards, or the, authorities, or the cabinet, the government authorities, we are not going to focus, more on, insulation point of view. Secondly, if we say if you want to go for the energy saving, the annual metering of the equipments and its insulation lines, such as piping, ducting, which runs in kilometers in the industrial applications. So we need to keep an incremental check on the heat loss and gain on every year on year, so that, we come to know that, okay, for the first year we have this much power consumption, because every product, every equipment has a life. So that life degrades with time. So we need to keep a check. And the third point which says in continuation to that is strict norms on the life cycle analysis of the HVAC systems, such as replacement of thermal insulations before the end of its service life. Now it can be, it is like, there should be some strict norms. Right now people are doing as per their knowledge. Still the awareness is not there, to this industry, if we talk about. So we should focus more on the life cycle analysis of any system. This presentation mainly I have made related to thermal insulation, so that we come to know about a specific topic. The fourth point which I wanted to say is, we should encourage building insulation, like Balasubramaniam sir said that, one of the project which they shared. Now, apart from the piping, ducting or the equipment insulation, we can insulate our building systems. So complete building from the outside wall till the ceiling, uh, we can insulate, so that the uh, heat gain coming through the solar radiation or can be reduced. So if we talk about from the wall and roof exposed to the solar radiation, that can be reduced, and we can save on the air conditioning cost by reducing the designed heat load. So this is how we can do the energy saving through thermal insulation. The fifth point which I wanted to make is, all apex authorities or maybe government cabinet policies should come forward with some incentive plans by giving subsidies or providing tax benefits for the building owners, of course, so that who follows the energy saving techniques through energy audits. Now, this is very much required because this will encourage people to come forward on their own, take the ownership, and do all this required changes which is required in the HVAC systems. It might be insulation, it might be a fan, it might be various other components which you can do.
Our next topic for today's session is energy efficiency designs for commercial and public spaces. To present this topic, I would like to call upon Mr. Anish Kadian, Executive Director, Property Management, CBRE South Asia Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Anish Kadian. Mr. Kadian is presently serving as an Executive Director, Property Management with CBRE South Asia Private Limited. Presently, he is also heading the operations of a large team of professionals in the arena of building and facility management. His areas of interest include maintenance, management, corporate governance, strategic planning, and technology interventions in the industry. He is a postgraduate in mechanical engineering and has an experience of 25 years in management of services in technology intensive environments. He is also a professional engineer. He is a fellow of IEI. He is an active member of ISHRE. He is also a certified energy auditor and an IGBC accredited professional. Today, Mr. Anish Kadian will be discussing about energy efficient designs for commercial and public spaces. Please welcome Mr. Anish Kadian.
We manage close to about 200 plus buildings all across India. About 180-85 million square feet is the area that we manage. And our teams basically touch the lives of more than, I think, about 2 million people, give or take a few here and there. So air conditioning efficiencies is very important because all buildings in India, especially the IT sector where we service, uh, the sector has grown because we have these good buildings where people can be productive and deliver what their customers want in the US and in the foreign markets as well as India. So it's an important aspect. Today, I'm not going to speak specifically on the design aspects of it. I'm going to talk from an operations point of view because that's what we do. That as an operator, sometimes you pull our hair. Why did the designer do this? And I try to be on these platforms because most of these platforms generally are focused on the manufacturers or the consultants. So it's good, I thought, to share an operations point of view on the design aspects. And definitely, I'm not going to be speaking about the new normal. I'm going to talk about the design, which is good design. Now that if it's a good design, it'll work even if it's a new normal post-COVID or even before, because that's what good HVAC design should do. The first point is about a whole systems design or a whole systems approach. While that's how it is normally done, but when we take over the building from our projects, a new building we take over, a lot of times we see that the chiller is, very high spec chiller, very low IKW, but insulation that they put out there it's sometimes not even there in a lot of places, which should be there. And Hiten will agree with me that's a big challenge. You find that they've got a lot of motors all around, pumps. Those pumps might not be high efficiency pumps. They're trying to save cost somewhere over there. Or maybe the cooling towers, for example. The cooling towers they have used are maybe undersized or underrated, or maybe even overrated. So the efficiency of the whole system, while the chillers might have a very high efficiency, but the chiller doesn't work in isolation. It works in a whole system. So that, I think, is one of the core, I would say, asks from an operator in terms of engineering design. That's how design should be, but on ground, when you see, it doesn't really work that way. The other aspect is about integrating all these systems. Right now, in most buildings, except some really technology-intensive buildings, they're all in isolation. The cooling tower, somebody switches on from a separate panel, the chillers, the pumps. Technology is available now. So as operators, we would like the design to be integrated. Everything should work in sync. So if we need two cooling towers to achieve the desired cooling rates, then they should automatically come on. It shouldn't be that the operator has to go and do it, because then you lose that 1-2 hours of efficiency, and doing that every day for the next 10, say 2 months, there's a lot of energy waste which is wasted. So that system integration, I feel, is very, very important, not from a, I would say, the system point of view, but in terms of operations. How does the operator integrate the whole system together? Just a simple thing of putting all the controls in one place will go a long way to make the systems more efficient. The other aspect that, if you were to look at the whole systems approach, is the kind of people that are going to be operating it. While it's not the gambit of the designers, they don't really know who's the operator, but then you have to design keeping in mind the ecosystem that you are in. So as I think Megha brought out in the beginning, we have very few trained HVAC technicians. So we have to keep that in mind when we are doing design. Making a very futuristic design, but we don't have people to operate it, is going to be a problem. You'll not get the efficiencies, you'll not get the cooling rates that you want. So one has to keep that in mind when designing. That will go a long way to actually make the systems operate the way a designer wants. A designer might say, okay, this is the heat load and this is the kind of system I put in. But our experience of running buildings is that either the systems are over-designed or grossly under-designed, and then modifications have to be done accordingly. So that is one point, which is the whole systems approach. The most critical point, I feel, from an operations point of view, is design for maintainability. Now, what that essentially means is that maintenance is an integral part, of your own vehicles. You get them serviced every 6 months or whatever is the frequency. Same way, maintenance is needed all across a building in the HVAC system. Be it your chillers, be it your pumps, your cooling towers, your air handling units, everything needs maintenance. If the systems are not maintained adequately or properly as per the OEM's recommendation, the performance will definitely fall. It's not very uncommon. You go into a AHU room which is built, you don't even have enough space to open and take out the filters. That's how bad sometimes the design is. Another, I would say, example I'll give you is CII has, you showed in your presentation, Bala, about the automatic tube cleaning systems. Now, if you don't give space for that place, those systems that you put in, obviously not be able to do it. And suppose, okay, you don't even do it, but you definitely need to clean the tubes, even a manual way, in a periodic manner. If you're not giving space for that in your plant rooms, you will end up with chillers which are working at maybe 30 to 40% less than their design capacities. If you see a lot of places, especially the smaller age air conditioning units, they're placed in such places where nobody can go. Maybe it's by design, maybe that the people who are putting it out there don't want it to maintain, so that they get a new chiller order or a new system order in a year's time. But I think these small aspects, if they're kept in mind when you're designing, so that you keep the maintainability aspect when you're doing the design, of course, from the fitment point of view, as well as the system point of view as well. And the third point, which I think is also very critical and which is being seen at this point in time, is the design for flexibility. What I mean by that is, uh, traditionally, developers, when they design, designers, consultants, they will say, okay, this is a building, it's going to be 10 lakh square feet. This is the estimated thermal load, how many people are there, and they say, okay, you need 3 chillers of this capacity. However, our experience shows that buildings rarely operate the way they were designed. It might start off as a commercial building, but because of the nature of the market, it switches over from commercial to a mixed use, where there's some retail component and commercial. Sometimes they might even set up a lab in some of the offices. So, and in public spaces, it is even more. You take a mall or you take a hospital, those kind of places, the load fluctuations are very high. Uh, this COVID has actually shown us that you may reach a situation where you'll actually have just about 5% of the load of the building. Most chiller designs and the whole HVAC system designs at present don't cater for such eventualities. There was a very good building design I saw sometime back in one of the buildings we managed. Because at night, a lot of offices, most offices are closed, but they still have servers running. So they had, in the design itself, placed a chiller, small capacity chiller, which was only supplying chilled water to the smaller AHUs for the server rooms. So that gave the clients advantage that they didn't have to put their own systems in place. So I think these are the areas which a designer, and hopefully there are some designers in the audience, in the delegates, who will see that when you design, if you can keep the flexibility in mind, it'll go a long way to optimize the resources. Similarly, how the future pans out, nobody really knows. But if the system can be designed for some kind of flexibility for future, either reduction in load, which is rarely, but it can happen, or an increase in load, that will again save costs in the future, but more importantly, save natural resources. And I think that's what Balasubramanian has also brought out, that we have to really now start thinking about not just today, but the future. And that starts with good design. So just to summarize, 3 areas which I think from an operations point of view, designers can look at. One is the whole systems approach. Second is the design for maintainability. And the third is design for flexibility.
Our next topic for the session is innovative insulation technologies for HVAC. Mr. V.D. Zhala, Managing Director of ASK Group of Companies, will be presenting it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. V.D. Zhala is the Managing Director for ASK Group of Companies. He holds 30 years of extensive experience in the field of thermal insulation. Ask Group of Companies is one of the most trusted names in the insulation industry, offering industry's finest product quality with wide range of variety in products with timely delivery. Also having the manufacturing facility by the name of Alaska that provides solutions for PUF pipe sections and pre-insulated pipes across the nation. Mr. Zala will be discussing about the available and practiced innovative technologies in insulation technologies for an efficient HVAC. Delegates, please welcome Mr. V.D. Zala.
Basically, we are in the field of thermal insulation since last 30 years, and I have a on-hand experience for the thermal insulation applications as a contractor. And then after we have switched to manufacturing also. So we have a dual experience of manufacturing as well as application as an applicator. So we have faced several problems during this 30 years of experience. So we have decided to go for a pre-insulated pipes. Pre-insulated pipe is a totally new concept in India, basically. Very rare manufacturers are there, and we want to make it more commercialized. So we came with a very simple fundas of pre-insulated pipe. In pre-insulated pipe, we are offering a GI cladding, aluminum cladding, SS cladding, and HDPE cladding. Okay. And in pre-insulated pipe, in inner pipe, maybe the MS pipe, SS pipe, copper pipe, or PPR pipe, or any other CPVC pipe, something like that. With a pre-insulated pipes, we get a very better efficiency, very good efficiency compared to our conventional insulation system. In conventional system, we have a two half section of pipe section of any of the material, or a tubing of a nitrile rubber, or a sheet of a nitrile rubber, where everywhere there is a adhesives, primer, joints, joint sealing, and everything is there. So there is a lot of chances for the poor quality of insulation material due to the poor quality of labor application. So with a pre-insulated pipe, all this system can be avoided basically. And in a pre-insulated pipe, PU foam is injected in between cavity of cladding and pipe directly from the high pressure machine. So all the cavity is filled with a PU foam, and there is a no cavity, no gap. So it's a uniform insulation throughout the length of the pipe. And due to this, you are getting a highest efficiency in insulation system. Basically, we all are talking about the efficiency of machineries of a compressor, fan, pump, cooling tower, but nobody is talking about the efficiency of the distribution system. That is also a very big part of the overall system. Everybody is concentrating on the efficiency of the mechanical system, but at the same time, insulation is also a part of a distribution system, and it affects a lot if the insulation is very poor. As you see in the slide, lot of gap can be there in a PU pipe section, or in a rock wool mattresses, or in a nitrile rubber. So there is always a sweating issues continuously, and there is sweating means it's a loss of energy. So with a pre-insulated pipe, we can avoid this. Patel also discussed about the service life or a life cycle of the insulation. Normally in a conventional insulation system, you are not getting a life of 6 to 10 years. But with a pre-insulated pipe, you are getting a life of more than 25 years. That is one of the best advantage of the pre-insulated pipe. You are getting a very long life without any effect of atmosphere on the insulation system, because it's a fully covered with a metal cladding or HDPE cladding, and it's a jointless and fully pressurized foaming. So there is a no ingress of moisture from outside to inside the insulation system. That is the basic uh, achievement for the pre-insulated pipe. Just it is shown in the slide. There is a zero gap. It's a jointless. So metal cladding will always act as a solid vapor barrier. So there is a no ingress of vapor inside the insulation system. We have offered you the HDPE jacketing specially for underground piping, because in industries we have seen such a thing that due to the only one or two line, they have to go for the rack system, and that's why you have to install a rack also. Then over to a rack, you have to install a pipe also. So for such a thing, the normally rack gives a shabby design in the buildings. So we can go for the underground piping, chilled water underground piping with a HDPE jacketing. In a pre-insulated pipe, we have a various advantage, like there is a no adhesives, quick installation, minimum site installation work. Only we have to insulate at site is the only joints, only band, elbow, T-joint, wall box. That is only the joints we have to insulate at site. And we provide a ready-made kit for the same. We provide a ready-made kit for the band, we provide a ready-made kit for the wall, we provide a ready-made kit for the T-joint also. Second thing, it's a very solid insulation material, so it's a walkover insulation. Anybody can walk on the insulated pipe. Pipe will not get insulation, not get damaged. There is a no sagging of insulation, as it is a foam solidly filled with the pressure. There is a no human error. Basically, it's a factory insulated. This pre-insulated pipe gives you very high strength compared to any conventional insulation. It's now time to change over from the conventional insulation to the pre-insulated pipe, as it is a highly efficient system. And in foreign countries, it is always it is accepted everywhere, and it is accepted as a standard insulation system nowadays.
According to you, with the existing energy conservation practices, how do you see India as an energy efficient country?
Many people actually underestimate India in a way. If you see in India, the cement sector specifically, if I have to tell, the cement sector is number one in energy consumption in the entire world. I'm sorry, it's slightly deviating from the audience. But the idea is, if you see, we have the right system in place. Looking at the India Cooling Action Plan and how much additional cooling has to be, or the refrigeration system has to be brought in from the reefer systems for the farmers to the end product, or for what do you say, the increase in the HVAC systems. We are expecting a lot more to be improved in India. But in the future, what I believe in opinion is, I think more and more ESCO or energy saving companies, that is, they implement the product, and based on the energy saving, you get more and more returns, and you can pay them on an installment or that basis as well. So that can be a consideration for the future. The net zero energy systems that we are looking at, specifically achieving for the building sector, it has been major, and this is something which we are looking at further also. And there are many solar technologies that can be brought in, like the hybrid solar that we are talking about with wind and hybrid system, and this system. We at CII, we can help you also achieve it. There is a separate IGBC rating system specifically on net zero energy building. So net zero energy building, we have been helping people to achieve it, and we can also probably help more and more people achieve it. And this definitely can encourage achieving the net zero energy. Probably the next step that we have to look is the net zero carbon part, but which is a little bit higher on the sustainability aspect part. But net zero energy is something which we can easily achieve. It is possible to achieve specifically with the amount of space and other things that we have. And it is not necessary that we have to look at only the installation of the on-site systems. We can also look at the installations on the off-site systems also to achieve the net zero energy.
With India Cooling come into action, there is lot many HVAC applications in terms of comfort, in terms of process is going to come up. Now, the point which I wanted to communicate is thermal insulation. If we just speak about what will be the K value, what is that? Actually, it should come with the norms that, still every different consultant, every different people has their own, experience in the generic of insulation, what they have. So probably when those norms comes in, wherein I shared in my slides and the points which I wanted to make, definitely there will be a lot of saving. Like if you talk about net zero building, people talk about the equipments, the capital equipments that we install, the efficiency what we get from the motors. But the point which Mr. Jala had said, that the distribution lines, which are the veins and arteries which runs this HVAC systems, that has to be also focused, which can also contribute towards the net zero or the energy saving part. That we need to come, and that is what I need to highlight during this session, that awareness has to be still created more and more. As Mr. Anish also shared, that there were few plant rooms where the motors were not insulated. It is condensing. Now, what is condensation means? That condensation leads to energy loss, corrosion. Then there are a lot of factors, like there are a lot of unhygiene condition also is created in terms of fungi and algae growth over it. So there are many factors which drives to it. So yes, but the point to insist, India is a growing market. It's going to grow further on the HVAC. Like if I talk about 20 years back, air conditioning was asset, or it was considered as an asset. But now in today's time, it is a mandatory requirement, like what we use a mobile phone. Everybody needs an air conditioning. Everybody needs comfort. So this is a system. If we also integrate along with the capital equipments, definitely there will be a lot bigger impact on reducing the carbon footprint.
So Hiren, you also mentioned about the norms.
Yeah.
What comes in the way for us to create such norms ahead for India?
See, as I said, still there are the norms which considers all the generics with standard thickness. So applications wise, if we focus now, if I say in a commercial building, if it's an IT building, if I see from the insulation perspective, I see plant room as a different application. I see shaft area as a different application. I see office area as a different application. As an insulation expert, if I talk about, but if we see on the design prospect, it is considered as the same, that whatever lines are running through the parking area or the shaft area or the office area, the thickness selection and everything is same. Where it has to be different. So to make that point is more and more awareness when it comes, more and more acceptability as it comes. Insulation not be considered as a cost initially. It's an investment that maybe after 2-3 years you invest at a time, and 4-5 years down the line you get your money, and 5 years then you save on your money. And apart from that, you are getting the energy saving, which is the primary focus for you. See, if I read the norms which are there, NBC 2016 norms, they have a standard thickness which has been mentioned, and there are various generics which have been mentioned. So people they pick expert as per their experience. So I think this might come with more stringent norms. Maybe this is a very this platform is very it will be a very shorter time to explain me about the what are the norms and all. This is a bigger thing. Like if I touch about underdeck insulation, if I talk about in residence or industrial, people are doing it, people are not doing it. Now underdeck is wherein the solar radiation, there are 4-5 degrees or 6 degrees of heat gain which is happening through the rooftop. Now what that heat gain is doing is it is increasing your heat load. So people are not much aware, because there are no norms that it has to be a mandatory norm that it has to have an underdeck insulation. There has to be a roof insulation. There has to be a wall insulation. So people are not thinking in that prospect to invest on that, because initially capex and opex comes into the picture.
So maybe I can add here,
Yeah.
Prasad, and of course Hiten and Mr. Jhala are the experts in this. But ASHRAE does lay down, ASHRAE 90.1 actually does lay down the insulation requirements. It doesn't say it basically gives an output. Like, okay, this should be the gradient in terms of the heat loss which should be there.
Right.
So I would say the norms that you're saying, the barriers to the norms are more, I would say, the push hasn't come from the customers so far. Once customers start asking, like now, for example, in air conditioning, ASHRAE or ESHRAE standards are now de facto. So I think that's where once the awareness increases, right now, if you talk about barriers, one is awareness is a barrier right now. And second thing is, because of awareness, customers are taking insulation as just everything is the same for them.
Right.
So I think once the customers also start demanding better quality insulation, more effective insulation.
Once the people become aware that, if I do underdeck insulation, I'm going to invest X amount, I'm going to save it in 2 or 3 years, then the factor will come into. Now the norms are there in place, sir, but like to follow them, there is no strict norms that yes, if I don't do the underdeck insulation, I'm not going to get the OC of the residence building or the the industrial
that is a slightly dangerous I would say wish list, because regulation sometimes inhibits innovation.
Right.
But yes, some more, I think awareness would be the key.
Right.
And automatically things will fall in place, because that's what's happened in the air conditioning industry, the chiller and the main design aspects.
IGBC and other rating systems also consider the insulation, and all the ASHRAE norms that we were talking about, sir, it has been followed in that on a continuous basis. What should be the U value from what side of the system and how it should be. And actually you get more points in doing better in that. and on an overall rating, trying to encourage, of course, getting one of the best buildings in terms of energy efficiency also. That is the final objective with which we are looking.
I would say federal buildings or government buildings more specifically, while of course you have malls and all also public spaces. But I'll come to the federal aspects of it. So first, of course, the GRIHA standard which are there, and of course IGBC has also got a lot of standards. Adoption of the standards was very poor earlier in the federal buildings, but now the government of India, about I think 5 or 6 years back, they had mandated that GRIHA will be the standard they'll be approaching, and all the buildings are now mandated to be GRIHA standards. So that was one barrier which of course has been managed to some extent. But I think the other aspect is accountability and maintainability in a way. Accountability in the sense that these are public buildings. While the central, there are organizations like CPWD and all who do the maintenance at MES, but they are constrained in terms of the way that they approach the maintenance. It's generally a standalone, like in a commercial building that CBRE we manage the entire budget. So if we know that, okay, technology is available, which will enhance the efficiency of the chillers, and it will give a payback period of 2 years, we are easily able to implement it. Whereas in federal and public spaces, that implementation time cycle is slightly longer, obviously because it is a public money which is being spent, so it has to be spent correctly. So that, I think that is one barrier to, I would say, get the best highly more efficiency of your systems. And then of course, the usage patterns. In a commercial private building, you have a lot of control on who comes in, who goes out. You have control over how much you spend on the systems, and there is the building owner is actually responsible for that. In public buildings, the ownership, of course, is not always very clearly defined, and then how much of money they're spending for improvements and efficiencies, that I feel sometimes is it gets diluted, and then you're not able to focus on energy efficiency. There, the focus is not on energy efficiency because it's part of the whole government setup. But I must say that over the last, I think 5 to 6 years, there has been a change in this approach, and a lot of new buildings which are coming up, and maybe Mr. Jala would be also supplying materials, or maybe Hiten also might be doing it, and Bala might be actually consulting to them. The newer buildings, for example, the Indra, there's a building in Delhi which actually is net zero, and I'm forgetting the name of the building, but that was a showcase building, and it in fact won the ISHRE Building Excellence Award as well. So the government is actually making the steps. Coming to the private sector, for example, airports, they are I think already they're at the forefront of energy conservation, especially the larger private airports, GMR or GVK in Mumbai, not GVK now, in Mumbai as well. So they're already there, but the I would say the non-privatized airports as yet, the focus hasn't yet come on the air conditioning side, but I think it's just a matter of time because costs are increasing every day. So that will force people to shift over to a more energy efficient manner.
I just give one example of Australia. One of my relatives is going to purchase one bungalow near to Melbourne, and I just looking at the brochure and a complete file of the that scheme. There is a one drawing approved by the government having a more detailed drawing of thermal insulation design for that bungalow. If this level will come to India, then definitely we will say that it's a really green building. In the plan passing only, there is a plan design, detailed design drawing for the thermal insulation of wall and roof. If this stage to be achieved in India, so that we can give a really green building.
The attitude of OEM also makes a difference for accomplishing energy efficiency, especially using quality sensors or quality parts in their OEMs.
Well, definitely they're the ones who supply the equipments, and I think they cannot be kept away from this energy efficiency dialogue. And there are two ways to think. I think one is the stick and a carrot. So the stick is, of course, regulatory frameworks which mandate it, but I think the carrot is what really works, and that I think is what BEE has done they have actually revolutionized the way manufacturers are focusing on energy efficient systems and equipments. So I think OEMs play a big role. They are the ones who are spending the money in the R&D and coming up. It's about how to incentivize the OEMs, because ultimately they spend the money in developing a very highly efficient chiller or a low efficient, low energy use pumps. That will only work if they have enough market for it, and the market will come when there is a push for energy efficiency by the government. So I think the Bureau of Energy Efficiency approach has been good. One ask I've always had in these kind of conferences and how to kind of put it across more effectively is that how is a building owner or somebody who's running buildings, how are they incentivized for being more efficient than the next building? So one way, of course, is that you use less energy, which is great. You spend less money, which is a direct savings. But that is not a big motivator for a lot of in commercial buildings, because ultimately it's a pass-through cost. Even maybe the building that you are in, if you are paying some common area maintenance, the developer is passing through that cost because it's going directly to the occupants. So somehow, if in addition to the carrot that is given, not a stick is such, maybe a padded stick, which incentivizes maybe either through rebates in the energy bills or through additional SOPs that are given to developers who actually reduce their energy to below certain levels. So I think that is how I would like to see the future. But to answer your question, OEMs are very, very critical for this. They are the ones who do a lot of R&D, and not only big chiller manufacturers like Trane and Johnson Controls, but even the insulation manufacturers. They themselves are doing a lot of work, so they will really contribute to energy efficiency.
Sir, from our side, we have been interacting with OEMs. For example, we had a small meeting with a recent supplier, looking at requesting him or looking at those OEMs to look at the possibility of considering the ESCO model. That is one, that is energy saving company model. They implement and invest. And apart from that, we have been in touch with many of the suppliers who have been looking at energy efficient products, and we have been, of course, promoting the product, and the end OEM who is installing is completely different. But we have been, looking at always the guaranteed performance based system, and in a very accurate and proper way, sir, that we have been doing. These are the two major things. We have been in continuous engagement, and we have been in engagement with many of the suppliers. Rather, I would put it this way: it will be a different view from different suppliers that we are looking at. But OEMs, end OEMs, we have been encouraging. Means, of course, I've been talking on the technical part of the energy efficiency, but my belief is it is more on the managerial front. Now, finally, what the end user, what the end user manages. You give a technology to a person, but the person is unable to manage. That is also a situation we have seen at the end. But those kind of things means I think we have to create more and more an awareness on the sustainability aspects, on the energy efficiency aspects, and on specifically on looking at the OEMs as well on how they can also improve on their own self. So I think in that way we should approach probably in the future. But still, there is a long way to go. I do agree on that.
That's very inspiring, Mr. Balasubramanian. So last question in this panel.
Regarding the air conditioning system nowadays, and talk about the insulation only, not of the mechanical part. All manufacturers should go for as per the international standard of the insulation system, so as the efficiency of the insulation system get increased. Nowadays, as per the IS is a very common word, but it is not actually the IS. Or everybody is talking about the as per the IS standard, but nobody is talking about the ASTM standard or actual IS standard. So everybody should go for the quality product at the time of manufacturing only. There should not be any compromise in the quality at the time of manufacturing. That is the main part to increase the efficiency of the air conditioning system.
Insulation is a material. It's a lighter material, and transportation cost plays a very important role once you come on the costing of the insulation. So more we manufacture here in India, more nearer is the site to the factory, you can reduce the cost, number one. Number two is, as Jala said, sir touched the point in wherein we follow here as a IS standard. Now, if we talk about, we need to learn from the ASTM standards and Euro standards that, if we talk in terms of energy saving, there are products available. Of course, it comes with a price and it comes with the ROI. So there are various categories available with us now. If you have a fire standard which you follow the Euro standards, then there is a different material in the same generic which has to be used, but of course the cost is higher. Now, if you have a green building project which is coming up, you can come up with those kind of products which has those Euro standards, which can save on energy, which can give you more fire norms. All those coin, if we club together, if we integrate together, then we can have solution to the cost and as well as the application part.
What about the fire properties of pre-insulated pipes? What standards and what class of fire does it compare to?
For a pre-insulated pipe, the jacket, metal jacket, that is a aluminum or a GI or SS, will act as a fire barrier. And PUF foam is having a class 1 fire rating, and PIR has also a class 1 fire rating. And when it is cladded with a metal cladding, then it is having it can pass the fire spread index as per the ASTM standards. So regarding the pre-insulated pipe, I think so nobody should think of the fire if it is a cladded pipe basically. So pre-insulated pipe is a cladding with a cladding, so it's a fireproof material.
Is there any study on type or category of insulation versus energy saving in KWH?
Yeah, I mean, we have few case studies, but as I said, now in India, last few years we have started doing the energy audits on the insulation prospect. So yes, we have few case studies, but then I can share them probably once they connect, through offline, because it's a big theory. Lot many factors comes into picture: the life cycle analysis, the type of generic which is used, the thickness of insulation which is used, all those factors might come. So yes, we have the case studies.
One more question. What is the success rate of geothermal based system?
So the geothermal system is what do you say? Have very few installations in India. If you see, ISB Mohali has been running from its inception. It's almost maybe more than 10 years or so, and it has been very successful there. Geothermal system, the temperature that you get will be different from different places. They are ready to consider the geothermal system in a much better way if existing bore systems are used and others, though the potential has been much higher. It is, I would say, it has been successful with the few installations that have been put across. Yes, it is successful.
So any system success will depend on many factors. Most important factor being the willingness to make it succeed. So geothermal systems, unfortunately, while they bring a lot of potential, but because of the higher slightly initial costs and the maintenance aspects, the focus, once they install it, then they don't maintain it properly or not able to maintain it. That is why they are not so popular. Otherwise, as a technology, it's very, very good. I have one or two installations that we manage, and we're getting a lot of good results as well.
Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing your valuable thoughts on today's topic of HVAC energy efficiency. We hope you enjoyed the session thoroughly. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Balasubramaniam MB, Mr. Hiten Harish Patel, Mr. Anish Kadyan, and Mr. V.D. Zhala. We would also like to thank our editor, Mr. Prasad Nair, for taking this initiative. Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you so much, our panelists. Have a great day.